Thank you, Martin. So I'm reporting the results of the Kickstarter study. So the first question, maybe you're all familiar with Kickstarter, but just to make sure everyone in the room is. So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform where people can pitch for funds. So these are just randomly taken screenshots from two of the projects, and you can already see they have quite a lot of interesting information here. So what is the number of backers that have supported the project? What kind of project was it? They have many different genres that we have looked at. They have a time period, and these pitches are accompanied by a very in-depth description of the project that details what the project creator wants to do and how he's going to incentivize backers and so on. And now this is important for the public domain because what can those pitch creators actually do? They can select between 4 different approaches. So they can either present original content. So if they have a great idea, it's not a great idea for a mass market, so they cannot go to the big venture capitalists. They put it on Kickstarter for a small amount of funding. So the second one is they could license copyrighted work and use those copyrighted work in their own creations and come up with something new from there and get funding for it. Then they could simply take something from the public domain and put it in a different form, reuse it in some way, or they could remix and create something new from all of the above. So that's why we looked at this. And the main research question is really, to what extent does the IP status of a Kickstarter project influence its chances of success? And we look at success in 2 different ways. On Kickstarter, a project is successful when it hits the amount of money that the pitch creator has claimed for. So if a pitch creator says, I need £5,000 to do my project, and then enough people contribute small amounts of money that in the end amount to £5,000, then it will be deemed a success. Okay, and it is also important to realize that there are many projects that overshoot this amount, but those who fail, they never reach this amount, and then they are not produced. Okay, so on those crowdfunding platforms, there is a problem of information asymmetry. So crowdfunding is quite a new phenomenon, but there is some academic literature on it and some well-known problems applied to this. And one of this is the problem of information asymmetry, because someone who wants to support a project, so someone who puts in money to fund a project is called a backer in this terminology, it's a back of a project. He does not know many things about the project that is to be created because he cannot see that project. He has just a description of the pitch creator, and he needs to make this judgment on its own. So there's a little bit of information asymmetry and security about the quality of the good that is finally produced. So now the problems are on both sides, really. So the pitch creator has an interest to signal reputation in order to attract backers. So he wants to signal that he's knowledgeable, that he is able to produce quality goods, and there are a variety of ways he can do this. One of the ways we're claiming he can do this is to send a clear signal that he is knowledgeable about the IP status and that he has taken action to clear the IP status. On the other hand, backers usually will only contribute once. So there are not many people who contribute to many projects in a professional way. So backers go to that platform, they see a project that is of their interest, probably something they have an effective relation to, like Chris was describing in his interviews, and then they would fund that project, but all the others are pretty meaningless for them. They have also, because of that nature, they have little incentive to do a lot of research on who the pitch creator really is. Right? So that's why there is, again, this importance for the pitch creator to attract backers, to signal his information to the crowd. And then you could also argue, yeah, but Kickstarter, these organizations, these crowdfunding platforms, they could take some actions to make sure that there is no fraud and that's all high quality, but they actually do very little, and we know that. So we came up with the following hypothesis. So hypothesis 1 relates to the fact that the IP status of projects serves as a quality indicator, and therefore it will lead to 1A, higher levels of funding, and 1B, higher levels of success, a high likelihood of success of the project. The second set of hypotheses works in the same way. So we basically argue that the IP status helps creators to price their product in a better way, because when they think that they have engaged in IP clearance, there's already some labor going into that project, and that sends a signal to the backers that, yeah, I've already invested in this project, there is something, I've cleared the copyright or the IP status or whatever it is, and therefore the pricing is a little bit better, and that would attract more backers and the likelihood of success will go up. So what is the data that we have extracted from Kickstarter? So first we had a kind of computer tool program, a kind of crawler that selected the projects, the list of projects that are of interest to us, because we needed projects that were successful, we also needed projects that were unsuccessful, and when you use the normal search routine, the unsuccessful ones are really hidden on the page, so it's very difficult to find them, so we needed some electronic help with that. Then we had 6 coders. These coders were trained on the various issues they needed to code, because some of them involved judgment calls. We also selected the samples such that they were a little bit overlapping, so we could see if coders were doing the same, were applying the same rationals and attributing the same codes. The overall sample is about 2,000 projects and captures the first quarter of 2014, the period January to March. And we looked at the genres: publishing, video games, comics, and theater, because these are the ones where probably the IP status is most relevant, and these are also the ones where public domain elements occur very often. And we have excluded the others from that. So in terms of the variables, we coded a lot more than what is displayed here, but the key variables that we looked at were first, obviously, the success, and that was a dummy variable, so it takes a value of 1 if a project was a success and 0 otherwise. The other variable we were interested are the funds received. As I told you in the beginning, the funds can either hit the value the pitch creator claimed for, it can be above that. Many projects that are successful actually overshoot, and they earn a lot more than they originally claimed for. Also, obviously, there is some piece of information captured in the fact that projects receive some money, but not reach the threshold. So there's also variation in there. So that we thought the success variable and the funds raised, they capture slightly different pieces of information, and that's why we looked at both of them. And these were our main dependent variables on which the analyses are being run. Then we also controlled for a lot of other things: number of backers, media type, obviously. From the pitch descriptions, we coded whether the pitch creator said, yes, I'm aware of the copyright status, I have already sought a license, or I will seek a license once the project is funded. So that is the license sought variable. The experience of the creator is also a strong signal to the crowd. You can find information of whether this particular pitch creator has already had successful Kickstarter projects, or sometimes they put up information about their personal life, which is not that relevant probably for that project that is funded on Kickstarter, but at least there is some information about the project creator which acts as a signal to the crowd and is supposed to track backers. We also have caught the status of the pitch creator in the sense that can we reasonably assume that this is a person that is widely known to the public, or is this an obscure person that has never been appeared in the public before, or is that a person that is not widely known, but it may be known to a particular community of backers, and these are the backers who mainly contribute to that project, which may allow them to reach the funding levels. So we captured that information as well. Then you have quite a variety of people doing those Kickstarter projects. It can be single pitch creators, people just having a good idea. It can be groups, it can be pairs, it can, sometimes these are even organizations. And we coded the gender. And then you saw on the first screen already there was a video. We coded the information whether the pitch has a video embedded on the front page of the project, because that also is a signal to the crowd. So these are the main variables, and now I'll go to the descriptive analysis. So this is a distribution of the sample. So you can see there is quite a chunk of public domain projects that is contained in the data set. So we have a good variety, and that allows us to run the subsequent analyses. This graph here highlights the mean between the mean of received funding, so pounds received, within each category that we looked at, and that's the top of the graph, and then the bottom half of the graph only looks at those projects that contained a public domain element, okay? And we see, if we add this little line here, that the means are slightly higher for those who contain public elements. We already see it from the descriptive data. Okay, so this is our first model that we run. So here we used the funding level, so the amount of pounds received, as a dependent variable. And you can ignore most of the numbers. I will highlight the important ones. So we find an association between the fact that the work is public domain with the funding level. So it's a positive association. That means funds received tend to be higher when public domain elements are used. And the same is true for the effect of the statement that a permission is sought in case copyrighted material is used. The second model here uses the success as a dependent variable, so it's just one success, zero not a success. And again, look at the public domain and third-party copyright are positively associated with the success. So a number in this table, a number that is above 1 means the likelihood of success is much higher compared to a pitch that uses original works only. And this is also across samples, and it holds also for the permission sought statement. So we see similar relationships. But it changes a little bit once we look into the categories, because the first two tables I've shown to you, they look at the whole sample across. We're not controlling for the categories here. But now we have broken it down to the various categories. And this kind of presents a similar relations that we have seen in the previous table. So if you see a dot here that is on the right-hand side of the red line, it means there's a stronger likelihood of success. If the dot is on the left-hand side of the red line, it means there's a lower likelihood of success. And we see that the effect is most pronounced in the theater category for public domain materials. That is here. Okay. So these are the overall findings of the analysis, and from there we draw a number of conclusions. So first of all, public domain works, analyzed copyright works are significant in funds raised and success, but the effect varies by media category. So a follow-up question on that could be, what drives those differences? So there's more research needed on this. What medium-specific production and consumption practices could explain those differences? So we could go and study this further. Another finding is that staying original or heavily transforming public domain and copyright works is risky and lowers the chances of success. So how does this work? Transforming at your own risk, is this beneficial or not? We need to look into this further. And finally, how does the IP status of the work interact with other signals of quality, fame, or previous experience of the creator, so we can refine our analysis a little bit further to look at those interaction effects. So this is what the study was about, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, same format. Time for a couple of questions. You baffled them.
Okay.
No. Give it time. Jonathan Subset. Yeah. Jonathan, and then Ben White.
I was just wondering, I mean, what's your interpretation of the differing results, like with theatre and comics and so forth?
Yeah.
And what information did you collect on the backers themselves? Do you think this might explain some of the differences?
On the backers, we collected only the number of backers, because that's really the only thing we can get. There is not, because our data source was the Kickstarter website, and there's no information about the backers other than the fact that someone contributed to the project.
But you coded for communities of interest, didn't you? Whether something is obscure or known within.
No, but that is
on the other side.
That is on the creator side.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's the creator. So we because the creator puts information about himself on that website, we sometimes can make a good judgment about whether he's known to a particular community or not. Or sometimes it's really a famous person already. We found all of those cases.
So that could possibly be explored to answer some of those.
Yeah, but I mean, this would be kind of confidential data. I guess those crowdfunding platforms, they have the data about the backers because someone takes a credit card information or whatever, but we cannot get it from the outside, and it would violate probably confidentiality
I mean, what's your
requirements.
sense of the differences with the theatre result and the comics result? Do you have a...
Can you repeat that?
Well, what's your sense of explaining the differences with the theatre result and the comics result, the interesting results, the differences that you had?
Oh, yeah, Chris has a good theory on that.
Do you want to speak into?
Yeah.
No, that's right.
Well, I mean, one idea is that it seems as though the performance of public domain projects in the publishing category, which consists of print published work, is actually low. And we think that maybe that's because audiences on Kickstarter are not interested in just simple republications of work. They're interested in adaptation. And so the comic book category public domain works were essentially works which existed as literary works which were adapted to the graphic novel format. And that seems to be attractive to the consumers. On the other hand, the status of public domain work in the video games category is not as clear, so we need to do more work to figure those things out if we can. Yeah.
Ben White had a question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really easy and short question. Were all the companies on Kickstarter that you analysed, were they American?
We coded for the origin, and we transformed all money values into British pounds. They where I know there is variety in where the money in where the project creators are based. So it's not only US and it's not only UK, but we haven't broken that down. But since our variables relate to the success or the funding received, we transformed it to the same scale, so we made them comparable. So there's not a problem with that.
We took all projects from
Yeah.
the world, from various days, from those categories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, I have to look at the data again to tell you they come from like 23 different countries or 5 different countries. So, but there is variety. It's not only one country. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we'll continue. Yeah. Is there? Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, presumably you weren't able to account for the amount of public relations and marketing work that was done by the various various project creators. I mean, I know when we were doing our Kickstarter last year, it was a hell of a lot of work that went into marketing it, letting it be known that this was available for people to back, And presumably you haven't, you have no way of quantifying that.
No. I mean, we cannot, we did not contact the pitch creators. We did not ask them to, how much time did you put in marketing your project and stuff. We haven't done this. This could be an interesting follow-up. Again, if we find a good community of pitch creators that regularly use crowdfunding platforms in the UK, for example, then we could create a survey to do that. That is possible, but we cannot get it from the information we have here in the data. That's the limitation of the data set.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so how long?